We're back with another special edition of the Pear Genius podcast. We just finished recording with our friend Anaya Farell from the Farrell Partners Group in Calgary. They are part of the sponsoring group for the summit night for youth mental health, and I'm going to put the links in the show for anybody that feels so inclined to donate to an incredible cause to families and children who are suffering with mental health issues. An amazing episode coming up.
Her story was really inspiring, really sad, but inspiring because out of suffering and out of darkness comes amazing opportunities to co-create something better for all of humanity. So that's where she's at now. That's why this event is going on. It's going to be a lot of fun the evening. There's going to be beautiful big prizes, and it's in a beautiful location. You get to dress up. So it's too bad we can't go. However, one of our lucky listeners gets to go because we have 2 tickets to give away.
Can you imagine we're missing a night out at the Gibson Fine Art Gallery, drinks, music, live music, and an auction and incredible prizes. I think Anaya was saying Flames tickets, and I guess there's some special goodies in there that we're not supposed to know about. But I tried to wrestle some of the details out of there. But if I can, I am going to sneak away and get there. But we do have 2 tickets to give away to a couple local listeners. And I'll also include the link for anybody that feels so inclined to donate to an incredible cause. And yeah, my heart hurts, but I'm excited to get into this episode with you and with Anaya. Welcome back to a very special edition of the Pear Genius podcast. We have Anaya Farell from Farell Partners Group. I got it on the card here. And Kati did the beautiful logo here in the
Yes, the
corner.
beautiful logo. Absolutely.
And yes, so we're here to talk about the Summit Night for Youth Mental Health, which is going on in Calgary on March 13th, 2025, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And we're going to have a QR code that pops up, and you're going to be able to purchase tickets. And we also will be doing a giveaway for 2 free tickets for some loyal local listeners. So I'm very excited about that.
Amazing.
So welcome, Anaya, and my beautiful wife Kati is here too, and we're gonna get rocking and rolling right away here. Oh, and it says here, I want to make sure I read everything too. All proceeds will benefit the summit through the Alberta Children's Hospital Foundation. So we are big time advocates for youth mental health and basically supporting youngsters going through tough times because I mean there's a lot of stuff that's been going on in our kids' lives and the kids around them. And Anaya is here too because she's been affected by this, which obviously sparked the inspiration for the summit night. So let's get into it right away. Thanks for joining us, Anaya.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So I guess we'll start with getting into maybe the journey of putting on this summit night. How did that come about?
Well, it all started back when my daughter was about 11. And it was sort of this, yeah, she was 11 and just turning 12. And she was going from grade 6 into grade 7. And I started noticing some changes in her. And I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought she's turning into a kind of a moody teenager. So I wasn't really worried about it. Then she started grade 7, and I don't think things were going as well as I think she had hoped. And I suddenly noticed she became quite dark, depressed all the time. And I actually got a call from the school that she was self-harming. So I had no idea, and I didn't even know what any of this meant. The only thing I could think of doing was taking her to my psychologist. And I didn't even know, wait, where do you even go with this? What do you do? I was just absolutely horrified, lost, and I was devastated for her that I could see the suffering in her. And pretty much from the time that this came on until the time that she passed, which was about sort of 6-ish years, there was no change, no improvement with her. And all I can say is that it was very difficult to navigate. We had gone so many different routes. I had taken her down to the States to see a psychiatrist there, trying to get some more answers. We saw private psychologists, social workers. We were in and out of the public system. She was hospitalized twice at Foothills for a month each time. And she was also on, I try to keep her off as long as possible, but we got to the point where I figured we probably better try some antidepressants and nothing helped. Like max doses of antidepressants, there was, again, they certainly didn't help. If anything, they made things more difficult for her.
And that was
So,
starting right away with the antidepressants,
no,
or
I
was
think
that
I
over
waited
several
about,
years?
I think it was over about a year and a half, 2 years of dealing with this. I finally figured, okay, well, I felt like we had exhausted most everything. And so that's when we tried the antidepressants. So, and again, we were on so many different ones, and it's a long process because you have to go on them slowly, you have to go off them slowly. So it's just another huge complication. And I said there was no improvement. The self-harm continued from when it came on, grade seven, until right before she passed. And it was
Was she
extreme.
hiding that from you?
She was initially, but once the school had called me, I think actually, I can't remember, because again, it was kind of far back and you kind of block these things out. But I think they had found a knife on her. And I think they figured out pretty quickly, like it was a kitchen kind of serrated knife, that she was self-harming. So that went on right until,
I remember it was probably around 2017 or 2016. I heard about cutting. The teenagers were cutting themselves. And I don't know if that was a trend or a fad or something. I don't know if I haven't heard too much about that right now. But I know that when you and I and Kathy talked earlier, one of the things about, bringing this to the light is worrying about other kids mimicking these types of behaviors. And I feel like this self-harm thing was a product of mimicking something that others were doing maybe on social media.
I think you're right. I think it's that. And I think it took me a long time to understand why she was doing it. And I think at least this is just kind of where I've kind of landed with this, is I think for her, and again, it's hard to understand if you're not in that state of mind, but I think for her, my understanding is it actually releases endorphins. So it's like a maladaptive coping function.
Mm.
So when you actually cut, it releases endorphins, you feel better, and I think you actually feel. So I know for my daughter, one of the big things, and this was actually, I mean, right from the beginning, I think she was almost numb. And certainly after the antidepressants, she was as well. So for her, cutting was a release. It was again, a maladaptive coping mechanism, but I think it worked really well for her. And yeah, we couldn't seem to get her to stop that, no matter with all the DBT, like all like psychologists, nobody was able to help with that. So I think you're right. I think in some cases, kids will see it, hear about it, and try it, and I don't know, maybe continue with it. But I think for my daughter's case, somehow she heard about it. And again, for her, it was that sort of coping, like it was a coping mechanism for her.
So where you left off with your story, was she 16 or 17 years old?
So when she passed, she was 17, and it was June of 2020, and she would have been 18 that August.
Oh, wow. So that was basically the very beginning of COVID then.
Yes, I think it was because I guess COVID kind of started that March, and yeah, and then she passed in June.
Oh my goodness. So you don't think that had anything to do with it? Like she was probably already on that path without the pandemic adding to it.
For sure. I think there was no question she had been planning it for several years. I'm quite certain of that. The only thing I'm looking back that I'm kind of grateful for is because when everybody, I mean, was home, at least I got that extra time with her that I wouldn't have normally had. So I remember asking her about COVID. I'm like, how are you doing? And she was like, I'm fine. She was happy. I think maybe she knew she was going, but she was just happy to have all that extra time with us. Again, we wouldn't have normally had. I know she missed her friends. I think that did have an impact. And then it gets difficult too with the phone. I mean, you don't want them being on their devices all the time, but if that's their only means of communicating with their friends, yeah,
I was going to ask you actually about her friend circle. Were they struggling too with mental health issues?
absolutely they were. Yeah.
But your daughter was the only one that went through with it.
Yes, that's correct. She had a couple friends who had several attempts, but she was the only one who completed.
That's a tough thing for a mom and dad to go through. Losing a child is something that I cannot even imagine. How do you, when your child takes their life, how do you announce it? How do you honor the passing? Like, what did you guys do?
I think the first concern was the school. because I did call the school right away because I knew that the group of friends that she had were high risk. And I was also, I mean, I was concerned about their mental health once they found out what happened to her. And so, if I'm again, that time was just such a blur. I remember I got my husband to call all the parents and just have the parents know right away so that they could tell their children in a kind of a safe setting. I really struggled with what to tell the school because they were going to put out an announcement. And again, I didn't want to say suicide because suicide's very contagious. And I didn't want to put that out there. So I think, if I remember correctly, they did an announcement in a school newsletter and they said that she had passed, but they said it was not COVID related. And those were the only details we gave. I mean, obviously, her friend group found out and it got around, but I just wanted to be really cautious because, yeah, I mean, you just can't imagine this happening again. Like it's just like a grenade. It goes off and it destroys everybody.
One of the things that really touched me when we first moved to Alberta is I remember reading this article about this young men's friends group throughout Alberta. I can't remember how many guys there were, 5 or 10 of them, but I was in disbelief reading that they had a suicide pact and each of them were going to go through with it in different ways, but they were accountable to each other and that it was an actual support group for these guys on their journey towards suicide. And it totally baffled my mind that they were encouraging themselves to do this to themselves, and that is not the support you need from your friends to get through life. Like, one of the things that we've talked about off the show, and we want to bring more onto the show, so I'm really grateful that you're here, is the fact that we all suffer, through life, and we all have to figure out how to deal with it in a healthy way, and we really find out quickly who we can rely on, to help us get through it. And getting through it is not ending your life. Getting through it is coming out on the other end of the darkness and finding a healthy way to get through that. So I can't even imagine the darkness that was left behind for you to have to deal with this, bringing it back to your daughter. I think that it's amazing that this summit night is happening and that enough time has passed now that you can actually talk about this, because I remember when we first met you, I didn't press on this issue. You kind of alluded to it, and I don't know, I guess my heart was scared to ask, and I didn't want to pry, but at the same time, you want to hear people's stories, so I'm really appreciate that you share with us.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I still think there's such a stigma surrounding it, and people don't talk about because I wasn't ashamed of what she did at all. I mean, if anything, I think she was very brave. I think she was in so much overwhelming pain that if I felt after she passed, if that's how she was feeling all the time, I don't blame her. I completely understand what she did. But it's just still such a stigma around it. It's not, it seems like from a society point of view, it's not really okay to talk about it. It's not really, I don't know. I find that again, I was never ashamed, but I was like, oh, well, I don't want to bring somebody down by talking about this. But now I really feel that we need to be talking about this. And I think if it was talked about more and maybe more awareness was brought to it, I think that's a healthier place to be at the end of the day.
100%. Did you ever feel throughout the journey that somebody was failing her? As a mother, I would have looked and have thought, where did I fail her? I would have gone back and relived so many moments. And then where did the system fail her? Where did the teachers? Where did her friends? That must have been very difficult to navigate.
So the one thing I can tell you about suicide is you always go back and you're like, what if I did this? You're always questioning that. And I think shortly after she passed, I think I didn't blame myself. I knew that I had done absolutely everything that I could. I was really angry at the system. I felt like she fell through the cracks. I felt like nobody was listening to me when I said she's not okay just because she's very quiet and introverted. She doesn't act out, like she never acted out. She wasn't violent. There weren't any of those things. She was just incredibly introverted, quiet. I don't know if that's because she didn't get her as much attention as maybe some kids who were really acting out. I don't know. But I completely feel like there's a certain percentage of kids that are falling through the cracks.
Definitely. I've talked to our kids a lot, yeah, before this ever happened, before COVID even. I would openly talk about when I was 15 years old. And how do you explain it? You're confused. your emotions are all over the place. I wouldn't say that I was abnormal in any way, but why was I depressed? I don't know. I know my family life wasn't great, but I mean, I had suicidal thoughts. I had struggles that probably shouldn't have been there, but when you're a teenager, that's your entire life. That's your entire world. And even the littlest things feel like the biggest things. And, I try and always teleport myself back to that time so I can at least relate to the kids and be open with the things that I went through, the thoughts that I went through. And I don't know, how do you explain to your kids suicide should never be on the table, but it's something that it's okay to talk about and it's
Mhm.
okay to have dark thoughts. That doesn't define who you are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I think people are scared that if they talk about it, then kids are going to get it in their brain. That's an option, I think. But I think the more awareness you can bring to it, I think the better at the end of the day, instead of
Hmm.
kind of specifically not talking about it because you don't want to put ideas. I mean, there's the internet's out there.
Sure, yeah. I always would tell the girls right away that I said, I have the benefit of being this age now, but I'm looking at you. I can hold your hand, and I'm grateful that I get to be your dad. And if I made that choice back then, I would never know you now. And you hope that kind of connects with them, the realization that there is this huge future ahead of them, and they're just this tiny little acorn still.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's, oh my goodness, it's, yeah, it's very tragic, and you don't never want to see this. And but at the same time, your daughter was so young to start this suffering. Do you think it was puberty that, or
Yes, I've heard that can often bring on mental health, and I think certainly in her case, I think that contributed to it for
yeah?
sure. Yeah, I really do.
I
And you
found it.
have other children, right?
That's correct. Yeah, other
One
children.
one thing I did want to ask you about, you did mention that she had some type of eye cancer when she was
Yes, when she
younger.
was 2, she was diagnosed with retinoblastoma. There's two different types. There's the genetic and non-genetic, and she had, fortunately, the non-genetic, and but they still had to remove her left eye.
So right there, that's a huge challenge as a like a baby
Yes,
to all of a sudden
absolutely.
go
Yeah.
through this. And so what about the early years, kindergarten, grade one? Did you notice anything about her? Was she happy to be alive?
She was pretty quiet. She was pretty introverted, but one of the things I think I'm grateful for is I think she did have a fairly happy childhood. So that brings me comfort. Yeah, I think she was a pretty happy kid for the most part. Yeah, it was just when the mental health came on
Right.
that that's when things got really difficult.
Yeah, she sounds like an incredibly strong person to go
Well,
through
she was
that.
very empathetic. She really cared about others. She felt a lot, I'm sure, more than I would ever know. Like she just could feel everything, the suffering of others. Like she was very empathetic, very caring.
For somebody who can feel that intensely and not to know what to do with that in their system, it goes far beyond puberty. It goes into this amazing empath. And I think they call them indigo children because I was one too. And yeah, you don't know what to do with all of these emotions and all of these feelings. And if you don't have the proper outlet for it, it can be overwhelming. I remember when I was a teenager, one time I cut myself. And even then, it was just so somebody would stop and take me seriously because it didn't matter how much I was saying that I was hurting and I was confused and lost. It took cutting myself for someone to say, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So it becomes a very loud cry for help at that point, and it's hard to know what to do with that.
It's really difficult. And as a parent too, where do you even go?
So, this incredibly dark time, you have been able to, you must have had a moment of, do I do this too? Like, this is so difficult and so dark. Do I still want to live? So, how do you get beyond that?
That's a tough one again, because I was saying suicide's very contagious. I absolutely went there. And again, I think that's another piece. I don't think, and I'm coming from more of a support group or the healthcare system. I don't think they acknowledge that someone who's lost a loved one from suicide, that they are at a certain degree of risk. It was about 2 years that I really thought about it. And I was in a dark, like, understandably, but I was For 2 years, it was on my mind. And finally, after 2 years, I just, I don't know what changed, but I had to come to a decision. I'm like, I have to make a decision here. And I'm like, I cannot inflict any more pain than we've already had. And I had to make a choice that I'm staying here and that's it. And I've got to find a way to move forward. And if I can make changes or do good, then that's reason for me to stay. And my children. And it was a tough decision, but I had to make it. And as I said, I think for me, once I did, and I could see that maybe I could see the bigger picture, maybe there's more I have to do here, then that's where my healing started.
I think that putting on, well, first of all, talking about it right now is a huge thing, and shining the light on it is immense. And now we have this summit night. So, what inspired you? Can you fill us in on a little bit more about this now?
Sure, and maybe I can sort of talk about how I ended up getting there. First of all, when Raquel passed, I was aware that the summit was, they were building it at the time and it was going to be opening. And a lot of the donations when she passed ended up going there, which I was happy with. But again, I didn't really know much about it. Actually knew very little about it. And I'm just going to kind of bring in another piece here. One of the things I was really upset with the system and the whole piece around stockpiling. So my daughter ended up stockpiling her medication, her antidepressants, probably over a 2, 3 month period. And that's what she used. And it's really frustrating for me. I was actually devastated after the fact, is because they always tell, like, everyone will tell you, make sure all medication's locked up. And we did. The whole time we had everything locked up. I would have 7 days in a pill container of her medication, and that was it. No, once was I ever warned of stockpiling, that you should make sure that your child's taking the pills. Like, I never even heard of it before until she passed. Now it seems so obvious, but there wasn't a pharmacist, psychologist, psychiatrist. Nobody was talking about that. So after she passed, I ended up getting in touch with Alberta Patient Relations, and that's really your only place to go if you have complaints with Alberta Health Services. And I took about a year to get a meeting with, it was the chief pediatric psychiatrist for Calgary, a couple psychiatrists who had treated Raquel, and I can't remember, there were a few other people there as well. And my main goal of that meeting was to basically ask them, like, why are you not warning parents about stockpiling? Here we're giving kids these potentially lethal drugs, and parents need to know about this. That was the one point. And my other point was that when you have a child that's hospitalized, usually it can be 3 weeks to a month, depending on where things are at. And usually they're released pretty abruptly. And they'll have a parent meeting just before your child's released. And they kind of just go over, like, what are the next steps? Okay, are you seeing a psychiatrist? And then they'll give you a stack of paperwork. But they don't ever at any point look you in the eyes and say, these are the signs of suicide. If you see any of these, you need to bring your child back. Like, not once do they do that. So my goal for that meeting was to try and bring awareness to these two things. Nobody could like had anything to say about the stockpiling, why though it's not talked about. Nobody seemed to know. I found that really frustrating. And yeah, so anyway, so that was, it started there. They said that they were going to make some changes, whether they have or not, I don't know. It's something I should probably pursue. And then while I was following up with Alberta Patient Relations, asking where are we at, like, where are they at with this? Can I be part of this program they're putting together? They recommended that I join the Family Advisory Council for CAMP, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health and Addiction Psychiatry program. So I thought, okay, if I can, maybe that's a good place to start. So maybe why don't I join and see how it goes? And they work in conjunction with the summit. So I joined that, I think it was last January, and it's basically a group of parents who have had children go through the system. And I'm the only one on there who's lost a child to suicide. So it can be a little bit tricky at times, but the one thing I'm actually really grateful about is I've gotten kind of a behind the scenes look of what's actually happening at the summit. And there's a lot of amazing people trying to make some really big changes with very limited funds. But I have to say, I'm really impressed with, as I said, as angry as I am with the system, I'm actually really impressed with what they're doing. And so once I saw that, I thought, you know what, it would be really nice to support them. And that's how the whole charity event came about.
That is so great that there's this piece of hope that behind the scenes in all of this darkness, something really amazing is coming about, that there is this creative process in work and that you get to be a part of it, and that what you bring and what you're contributing is such a big piece of what they need.
Yeah, as I really think about what was it like, I think about like what would it have been like if the summit had been opened when Raquel was here? Would it have changed anything? Hard to say. You're never going to know. But the one thing I do like about it is Alberta Health Services has so many different programs. Like I can't even, I mean, I don't even, I'm not even aware of all of them. But I guess, so anyways, they've got that. In the before, what would happen was if your child was in trouble, you would go to Children's Hospital, wait for however many, 6 hours or whatever it is. And if they didn't think you needed to be admitted, they would send you home. And that was it. So then as a parent, you're dealing with, again, all this on your own. You don't know what to do. So with the summit now being open, I think their walking out hours, I think I'm not sure the exact hours, but I think it's till 10 at night. You can go in, you're not waiting in a hospital setting. You're probably going to be seen a lot faster. And every family leaves with resources in place. And the thing I really like about the summit is they've got one place where they know all the different programs. So if they think, okay, this child might fit in here, there's a lot more knowledge of what's available there than the children's hospital. The other thing they have is a day hospital program. So if you had a child who was admitted at the Foothill, well, I guess at any of the psychiatric hospitals, when they're released, they can go there. I think it's a 2 or 3 week program and sort of reintegrate back into regular life. The two times that Raquel was hospitalized when she was released, again, it was done very abruptly, and she crashed both times. It was just an absolute, she was probably worse than when she like coming out of the hospital than she was going in. And so so I think that's another thing that again, I'm really happy to see. I feel like they're on kind of getting on the right track. So there, to me, there feels like there's actually a bit of hope there.
Yeah, the thing that I'm taking away from this is Raquel didn't die in vain. That enough time has passed for you to grieve,
Yeah.
and now the amazing thing is watching you become reignited and seeing that this next generation of young people will have way better access to way better things, and especially the parents as well, to help them, because it's not so easy for someone in the depths to go looking for help when the people around them should be able to, kind of pick them up and help get them there. And yeah, this is amazing. It's an incredible story, and it's beautiful to see that she did not die in vain and that you are reignited.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't even know about the summit because, as I said, when she passed, I was aware of it. I'd heard it. I didn't know anything about it. And I think they're kind of struggling again. How do we get this out? So I know that they're going to schools and talking to schools and counselors and teachers. But again, I think a lot of parents don't even know about this. And I've spoken to a lot of people that are like, yeah, I didn't even know anything about it. So I think if I can try and bring more awareness to what they're doing and so that more people are aware, I think at the end of the day, that would be a good thing too.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be an awesome event. There's music by Jay Coda Walker,
Yes.
and there's drinks and a silent auction. So, do you know any of the cool prizes that are going to be on? And
Oh, for the silent auction, oh my gosh, I think we've got about 20 or so items, and there's some great things. There's some Flames tickets. We've got a Medi Spa, some skin products, and hydrofacial. I'm just trying to think. We've got gift certificates for restaurants. There's a lot of great things. It should be a really fun night.
that sounds awesome. And sorry, where is it taking? Oh, it's at the Gibson Fine Art Gallery.
Art.
We get to dress up. My wife buys tickets, and then we don't even get to go. I want to dress up and go.
Hey, if our daughter didn't have dance competition that night, and this is a big deal to her, so this is like her
Oh,
acro, and she's like,
yeah.
you have to
No,
be
you
there. So
can't. No, not at all.
that's why we're gifting the tickets. But I hate missing out on an evening where you get to dress up and be with other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like. Are you guys going to be there?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to be speaking, and we actually have somebody from the summit who's going to be speaking as well as to just from their perspective, what they're doing and just giving more information.
Okay,
You know,
awesome.
as you were talking, I was wondering, why don't I know about the summit? I have two girls in the school system. Why? And then it dawned on me, every week I get an email called The Summit, and it's about wellness, and it invites the kids to come to this Zoom meeting. 'Cause one of my daughters is online schooling. I'm like, oh, that's probably what it is. I do
Well,
have access to it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
right?
what else is happening at the event?
Well, as I said, it's 3 hours, so there's going to be the live music. We're going to have food, some drinks, and the silent auction. We'll be talking for a little bit, but I think it'll be. Oh, we also have a photo booth as well, so that'll be fun. So yeah, so it's just going to be a really nice night for a great cause.
I think we have all the info. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything else that you want to add?
I don't think so. I think like we've discussed sort of the stockpiling, and I think again, parents really need to be aware of that because nobody else is talking about it. So I'd say I think that's pretty much.
I would say that nobody is immune to this. Kids suffer in silence, and I would say that teenagers in their cocoon have absolutely the hardest time talking to their parents. And I think that as lucky as we were to be in that darkness when we were teenagers, I think the internet can be a pretty bad place too to help encourage you in the wrong direction. Uh,
Absolutely.
and it can also be a great resource if used for that. But if you're in the depths and you're looking for darkness, you'll find darkness.
Absolutely. And I'm certainly convinced that's what my daughter did when she was looking for ways to exit. I know she did. She was very smart, and I'm absolutely certain that's why she did. That's why I think it's frustrating for me as a parent that nobody's talking about the stockpiling because, again, with it's out there. By talking about it isn't going to cause kids to, it's not going to cause kids to do that. But I
Hmm.
mean, just it's already out there. So you just parents need to know. Because I mean, I certainly didn't know. And I have several other friends whose children were actually admitted as well to Foothills. And I asked them, I said, did anybody talk to you about stockpiling? And they said, no, we'd never, until Raquel passed, we'd never even heard of it as well. So it's not just me.
I mean, I know when Alora was little, a baby, I would be paying close attention to the news and seeing what kids are up to. And some of the parts of Winnipeg that we're from, I just remember being on the news that they would have these pill parties where kids would raid their parents or grandparents' pills, and they would go to this party and they would dump all the pills in this big jar. And then these kids would just take these random drugs, not knowing. And to me, I thought that was just the craziest thing. Like, who thinks of these things? Yeah.
That's wild. That's crazy. I would love to inspire people to just talk with their kids.
Mm.
Just reconnect with your kids. Yes,
Absolutely.
the ultimate goal, support this event for sure. But I have to say that after we met you at the coffee shop, we came home, the girls were in the kitchen, they were just making themselves food. And they don't really look at me. They're doing their own thing. But when I said, she lost her child committed suicide, they stopped and they looked at me. And now we're engaged. Now we're connected. I want to have a conversation. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Great.
So it's not just a one time thing. It's connect with your kids, get them to look at you in the eyes and feel what they're feeling. Let them tell you what's going on.
That,
So my ultimate goal is just let everybody connect. And then, yes, let's support this amazing evening.
that's great.
For sure. So once again, I'm gonna put all the information into the show notes. It's March 13th, 2025, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Gibson Fine Art Gallery. It is the summit night for youth mental health. Anaya Farell, thank you so much for being with us. We're so excited to be a part of this and gift these tickets to somebody, and I can see us being there next year. If it's every year,
And that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
we will be there. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'm excited to get this put out and really shine the light on this type of awareness because mental health is such a huge part. Like physical health is very important, but man, if you don't have your mental health, it's everything is an uphill struggle as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you
Yeah.
for helping shine the
Well,
light tonight.
thank you so much for having me and for your support. It means so much. Thank you.